welcome to the Reading Room. I'm Stephanie, and this is the playlist where I do reviews of the books that I read in the last month. This is the April 2023 edition, so we are going to be covering all of these books. The funny thing is, I actually thought April was going to be a terrible month for me because one of the books took forever to get through, but I am excited to say that I did do better than I thought I would. And this month, I'm also going to try and do something different and share non-spoilery reviews and then do more in-depth reviews on their own of books that I either really loved for Books and Bubbly or really hated for Wine Club. So first up, we have What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. And this was my first book of the month pick, as you can see by their lovely little logo that they love slapping on things. And I just want to say, oh my god, I loved this. Miss Marshall, I loved it. But before I go off the rails talking about how much I love this, let's talk back cover or inside cover copy to see what we're getting ourselves into. They were 11 when they sent a killer to prison. They were heroes, but they were liars. Naomi Shaw used to believe in magic. 22 years ago, she and her two best friends, Cassidy and Olivia, spent the summer roaming the woods, imagining a world of ceremony and wonder, the Goddess Game. The game became an obsession and a refuge for the three girls. That sanctuary was suddenly shattered when Naomi was attacked. Miraculously, she survived her 17 stab wounds and lived to identify the man who hurt her. The girls' testimony put away a serial killer, wanted for murdering 6 women. They were heroes. And they were liars. For decades, the friends have kept a secret that might be worth killing for, hidden in the forest. But now, Olivia wants to tell the whole story. Then she goes missing. And Naomi sets out to find out what really happened in the woods, no matter how dangerous the truth turns out to be. So that was the back cover copy for What Lies in the Woods. And again, as you can see, I bit the bullet and tried out book of the month. And I'm so glad, again, that this was my first pick because I loved this. Funnily enough, I felt that the MC and other characters actually read like adults for once. And then I saw a bunch of reviews on Goodreads saying that they felt this really skewed YA, and I had a really good laugh because I'm typically the first person to be like, what are these characters, teenagers? Like, why do they act so young? But not this time with this book. I tore through this. Now, I didn't stay up till 3 a.m. like I have when reading other thrillers, but this one did keep me eager to get back to it and turn the page. I liked the fast pace, the twists and turns that the plot took, and the gritty realness of Naomi using her scars to disarm people and somewhat take back power in her own situation. I also really thought that Marshall did a good job with the woodsy setting. It was used really well here. It felt magical and childish, but also kind of terrifying. The atmosphere was really done well. I want to also say that the twists were well paced and for the most part, never felt super over the top or unrealistic with the story that we were presented with. I would definitely give this 4 out of 5 stars if I were reviewing it on Goodreads. Overall, I really, really liked this, and I'm really excited to see what Marshall comes out with in the future, as I will definitely be obtaining a copy of it, especially if it's the adult fiction. So next up was The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. And I'll say that I knew this might be a challenge for me as fantasy isn't a typical genre that I go to. I feel like it's one of those ones that I either love or I really hate. And this one, unfortunately, kind of skewed towards the latter, but it did have a really good premise. So let's talk about it. So, fortune favors the bold, magic favors the liars. Ren is a con artist who has come to the sparkling city of Nadezra with one goal: to trick her way into a noble house, securing her fortune and her sister's future. But her masquerade is just one of many, and as corrupt nightmare magic begins to weave its way through the city of dreams, the poisonous feuds of its nobility and the shadowy dangers of its impoverished underbelly become tangled, with Ren at their heart. So the back cover really intrigued me, and I think I got this in either a Ghost Scribbler box maybe, or an Unplugged. I don't know. It was one of the subscription services that I've had for a long time, and it's been sitting on my to-be-read pile for a while. Because again, I know myself. I know fantasy. Like, I have to be in the right mood for it. That being said, the back cover copy is intriguing. I also feel the back cover copy is kind of misleading The dream and nightmare magic stuff wasn't even truly introduced until pretty much halfway through the story, and this book clocks in at over 600 pages. That is way too late to be introducing what the back cover copy is telling me this book is going to be about. Overall, I think that the bones of the story were good, but the execution really could have used some work. Like, the plot is there, the characters are good, the writing is good. It's just overwhelming. There's simply too much going on in this story. I was about 20 pages in and contemplating DNFing this, and then I looked at reviews online, and one said that there is a glossary at the back of the book. What? There's a glossary? But the glossary also doesn't define every single thing. Like, what? Like, the book introduces us to a fantasy setting. Cool, I'm on board. Fantasy world, fantasy terms, got it. But nothing is ever really described that well. And then the fact that there's a glossary at the back of the book that I have to flip to the back to try and understand what's going on, it really didn't work. Because I was, again, the 20 pages in, I'm like, am I supposed to understand what's going on here? Like, these are words I don't know. These are places I don't know. I expected a little bit more explanation. Like, obviously the characters know the world in terms, but as a reader, I do not. I need some explanation here. I'm not familiar with this world or the words that are used to describe it. There are different names for months, days, and directions, like left and right. It took me way too long to realize it was timestamps at the beginning of new chapters or story breaks. I looked in the stupid glossary for what those were, but the month names are not even defined in the stupid glossary. Like, what? Why? Are you kidding me? Like, even their timekeeping is different, but then there are times that they'll reference things as hours, but then they're also like, at the third bell toll, like, is it 3 a.m? Is it 3? What? Can you explain what is going on here, authors? Why not just tell me time in hours so I can easily understand what's going on? It felt like the authors, because yeah, M.A. Carrick is a pen name for two authors working as one, felt like the authors wanted a rich world, but didn't do the work necessary in order for the story to allow me to fully experience the world. It's not an inviting or engaging experience when I have to leave the story to look something up in the glossary at the back of the book. Also, definitely going to butcher the words from this book, including places and characters' names in this review. Like, I had to straight up rename several characters in the book because I didn't understand how to pronounce their names and wasn't given any clues on how to do so. There's also a giant cast of characters. Like, every character is fully named, making it hard to understand if I should keep track of them or if they're just brought in for one scene to do some exposition and leave. The back of the book has an index of characters, and I want to say there's at least like 30 to 50 on there. This is too much to keep track of when I'm already confused by the world building itself. I can't keep track of all of these characters, again, when we're only introduced to them like on page 50 and they don't make an appearance until page 450 again. Like, I don't remember who this person is. I'll also say that the magic system is there, but I don't understand it. Like, why is it so complicated? Why are there so many forms of magic in this? There's like not tarot cards, there's runes, there's star charts, there's that dream magic we were promised that, again, does not show up until halfway through the book. It just kind of felt like both authors wanted their own magic system in the book and just shoehorn them in without doing the work to make the systems work together or fully flesh them out. I still do not understand how some of it works. There's, again, just simply too much going on in this book, especially for the first of a trilogy. Like, I get that, yes, you're just dropping us right in, but it was too much. There were too many plots, there's too many characters, there's too many magic systems. For most of the book, I wasn't really sure what plot had the most importance. Like, is it the con that Ren is pulling? Is it the dream nightmare magic? The clash between classes? Figuring out the identity of the Rook character, who's basically a knockoff Robin Hood? But I don't know. You tell me. It's just, again, too much is the best summary I can give of this book. It's too much for one book to pull off effectively. I wish I could say I was going to read book 2 of the series because the ending actually did lure me in, and I overall do like the characters of it, but I cannot commit to another book of this size if it's going to be as slow and confusing as this one was. Overall, if I were to rate it, I would give it 1.5 stars, if maybe 2 if I'm feeling really generous. Next up was Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. And I'm also going to preface this review by saying that romance is typically not my go-to genre as well, but I've been expanding my to-be-read pile outside of thrillers, and this was also on sale at the Bookish Box shop, so I decided to give it a go. But let's see what we were getting ourselves into with this one. So Eve Brown is a certified hot mess. No matter how hard she strives to do right, her life always goes horribly wrong. So she's given up trying. But when her personal brand of chaos ruins an expensive wedding, someone had to liberate those poor doves. Her parents draw the line. It's time for Eve to grow up and prove herself, even though she's not entirely sure how. Jacob Wayne is in control. Always. The bed and breakfast owner is on a mission to dominate the hospitality industry, and he expects nothing less than perfection. So when a purple-haired tornado of a woman turns up out of the blue to interview for his open chef position, he tells her the brutal truth. Not a chance in hell. Then she hits him with her car, supposedly by accident. Yeah, right. Now his arm is broken, his B&B is understaffed, and the dangerously unpredictable Eve is fluttering around, trying to help. Before long, she's infiltrated his work, his kitchen, and his spare bedroom. Jacob hates everything about it. Or rather, he should. Sunny, chaotic Eve is his natural-born nemesis. But the longer these two enemies spend in close quarters, the more their animosity turns into something else. Like Eve, the heat between them is impossible to ignore, and it's melting Jacob's frosty exterior. So, overall, it was cute. I mean, it was really cute if you like the Grumpy X Sunshine pairing, as the hero and the heroine match it to a T. I also really like the representation and diverse cast. I do believe this is an own voices book, and I appreciated the realism portrayed with the MCs that are autistic. I also liked the main characters, and there were times that I really appreciated Eve's sense of humor. Kind of reminded me of Sophie Kinsella with Becky Bloomwood, who, to me, I love that character. I think she's so funny. Very dry British sense of humor, but I liked it. Though it did take some time to warm up to her, as we're introduced to Eve as she's writing in her diary and bitching out a client, even though she's kind of recognizing that she's to blame for the situation. So just kind of an interesting start to the book. I also had some real issues with the pacing and the repetition of the book. There's really only one plot, Eve and Jacob wanting to be together. There's some lip service paid to this looming festival that should have been a bigger subplot, but it's pretty much abandoned and only used at the end to do a flash forward. Otherwise, the story is a loop of Eve makes breakfast. They do the housekeeping together. Eve prepares afternoon tea. They both want each other but refuse to admit their feelings and go to bed. Eve makes breakfast. They do the housekeeping together. Eve prepares the afternoon tea. It wasn't enough of a plot to stretch it out over the whole book. Nothing really happens. There aren't that many other subplots, and again, they're shoved to the side or brought in randomly and then kind of just left in the dust. It's mostly just them having the same internal monologue about how they like each other, but they can't, but they're attracted to each other, but they shouldn't be, but they like each other, but they're both so gosh darn bad at relationships, but they want the other. I know to come with a romance book that the expectation that a lot of the conflict is going to feel manufactured, and it really does in this. It also felt like the stakes were quite low. Like, I guess, slight spoiler. Eve is called about a job that she is going to take in a few months, and she takes it. And so in the back of her mind, she's all like, ooh, I can't like Jacob. I'm leaving, even though I don't want to, and I don't actually really want to do this job. Then don't, Eve. You have a different job. Like, it felt like the stakes were there because Hibbert knew that, like, there needed to be some reason for there to be tension and conflict, but it's not enough. Fair warning, there is a bit of spice in this and some pretty explicit sex scenes. Plus, Eve is always commenting on Jacob's package and looking at the bulge in his pants or his muscular bum. It read a little weird how different Jacob was when he and Eve were kind of going at it. Like, I get people can be very different during sex compared to their normal selves, but I don't know. It read weird to me. And I guess also, congrats, Jacob, on your extremely large package. I'm happy for you. Again, this book was cute. If you like romance and like all the tropes that come with it, you might really enjoy this. I'd say this book is like cotton candy. It's fluffy and a bit one note. It is also part of a series following the Brown sisters, and maybe it would have helped if I had started with the first one so I knew what I was getting myself into. But it also doesn't read like you have to have read the others to understand what's going on. It seems like they're very standalone. Great if you have read the others so you can slot this one in there. But again, you're not going to be super lost if you haven't. From reviews on Goodreads, it does seem that my assumption is right, as other reviewers rated the first two books highly, but then their ratings dropped for this one. All in, I'd say Hibbert is a strong writer, and I'd like to see what else she's written. But if I were to rate this, I'd give this 1.5 stars out of 5, as I was skimming at least the last 30 pages or so just so I could be done with this, because again, there's not much going on, and I can't keep rereading the same scenes over and over again. So next up was I Love It When You Lie by Kristen Bird, and this was a book that I got from the Book Drop. It's their books for coffee pick, so the thrillers in their book subscription service. But let's see what we were promised. The Williams women don't just keep secrets, they bury them. The three Williams girls are as close as sisters can be, and they also share one special trait in common. Each of them have a man in their lives that they could do without. Tara, the pastor's wife, has been stealing money from the church and would prefer that her husband stay out of it. Then there's June, who would do anything to have a baby of her own, even if her husband is dead set against it. Clementine, the youngest, is entangled in an affair with her professor, a man whose behavior she's starting to seriously question. Their sister-in-law, Stephanie, an outsider, knows all the family dirt and is watching the three of them, and the men in their lives, closely. When the woman who raised them, their beloved Gran, dies on the eve of her 80th birthday, the Williams sisters return home to the Appalachian foothills to bury her. But their grandmother won't be the only one they'll put in the grave this weekend, because now someone has gone missing in the dark Appalachian woods. And if Gran has taught them anything, it's how to get rid of a good-for-nothing man. So this is actually my second read from Bird, and I do like her writing, and I felt this was actually a stronger read than her first book that I read by her. Also, I think my first book from her also came from the Book Drop, so I guess she's got the in there. I also had a really good laugh, as there's a character who shares a name with me, Stephanie, and then she has a sister-in-law named Tara, which I also have in real life. The one thing I will say about this book is I'm not exactly sure if it should be categorized as a thriller per se. It's very much a suspenseful murder mystery and family drama or domestic drama. What would you do for the ones you love? Would you bury a body to protect your family? It's an emotional roller coaster as we follow the sisters and learn about their individual struggles and morally gray choices. It's interesting to try and understand the choices they make, even if you disagree with the choices that they do end up making. The pain and the wanting in the writing is very real. I do think Bird shines in her ability to write atmosphere, settings, and inner thoughts, because I do think the viewpoints from all the different characters were very well crafted. That said, I did have some trouble with these shifting timelines, and we'd be in a chapter that starts with the setting in the present, but then the characters immediately talk about something in the past or reference something that happened already, and then kind of just shift into the now. I almost would have appreciated more delineation of like this scene happened in the past instead of someone just remembering it happening, but that's a tiny little nitpick. Besides dropping some breadcrumbs and teasing out the mystery, I almost had to wonder about Stephanie's point of view and why it was needed. I was also thrown by the fact that hers is the only one that's done in first-person point of view, while everyone else's is in third. There's a reason, I'm sure, but it's lost on me. But overall, I really enjoyed this, and I think I read it in like 2 days. I would rate this a 3.5 to a 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm definitely going to keep an eye on what Bird publishes in the future, because I have enjoyed her writing so far. So next up was The Secret Garden of Yanagi Inn by Amber A. Logan, and it's billed as a modern Gothic retelling of The Secret Garden, and it does what it promises to do, while also being set at a gorgeous hotel in Japan. But let's talk insider cover copy first. Oh, no, we got back cover copy. Still grieving her mother's death, American photographer Mari Lennox is sent to document Yanagi Inn, an old dilapidated ryokan, outside of Kyoto, Japan. By day, Mari explores the inn and its grounds, taking striking photographs and uncovering layers of mystery shrouding the old resort, including an overgrown secret garden on a forbidden island. At night, eerie weeping, which no one else seems to hear, keeps her awake. Despite the warnings of the staff, Mari searches for the source of the ghostly sound and discovers a devastating secret tying her family's history to the inn and its mysterious forlorn garden. I will say Logan is fantastic at building suspense and writing an eerie atmosphere. Her descriptions are really strong, and I could easily imagine the inn and the gardens and immerse myself in the story. It had the right amount of creep and horror elements without being overwhelming or too in your face. I was very curious to understand what was going on at the inn and why Mari was lured out there to investigate this seemingly haunted inn. I will say the middle of the book didn't drag, which is pretty impressive, but I actually feel like the ending kind of did. I was staying up late to read this until I was probably down to like the last 40 pages or so, and then things really slowed and everything got very convenient for the plot. The ending kind of felt very DCOM or Hallmark in some aspects, but I really did like the message and the epilogue of the book. Overall, I really liked this read, but now that I'm done, there are a few things I wish we'd spent more time exploring or developing. Like, some things were just extremely convenient, and some things happened simply because our protagonist didn't bother asking or understanding when talking with other characters, and they were practically telling her what was going on. I also kind of felt like the theme was spelled out too much for my taste. Finding a new normal, moving on and starting new beginnings, healing. Like, it was literally spelled out in the book what Mari was learning, but other readers might not have an issue with that. I would rate this about 3.5 out of 5, and felt even with some of the things that I didn't like, this is a hauntingly beautiful read that kept me coming back for more. And I will definitely be on the lookout for other works by Logan and add them to my to-be-read pile. Next up, we have The Only Survivors by Megan Miranda, and this is my April Book of the Month pick. And Miranda is kind of becoming a go-to author for me. Even if I don't always love her twists, I still think her writing is fabulous and really pulls me into the story. I guess engrossing is a really good word to describe her work. I think I read this in 2 days as well because it was really hard to put down. But let's see what we were promised. A decade ago, 2 vans filled with high school seniors on a school service trip crashed into a Tennessee ravine, a tragedy that claimed the lives of multiple classmates and teachers. The 9 students who managed to escape the river that night were irrevocably changed. A year later, after one of the survivors dies by suicide on the anniversary of the crash, the rest of them make a pact to come together each year to commemorate that terrible night, to keep one another safe, to hold one another accountable, or both. Their annual meeting place, a house on the Outer Banks, has long been a refuge, but by the 10th anniversary, Cassidy Bent has worked to distance herself from the tragedy and from the other survivors. She's changed her mobile number. She's blocked the others' email addresses. This year, she's determined to finally break ties once and for all. But on the day of the reunion, she receives a text with an obituary attached. Another survivor is gone. Now they are 7, and Cassidy finds herself hurtling back toward the group, wild with grief and suspicion. Almost immediately, something feels off this year. Cassidy is the first to notice when Amaya, the annual organizer, slips away overwhelmed. This wouldn't raise alarm, except for the impending storm. Suddenly, they're facing the threat of closed roads and surging waters. Again. Then Amaya stops responding to her phone. After all they've been through, she wouldn't willfully make them worry, would she? And, as they promised long ago, each survivor will do whatever he or she can to save one another. Won't they? A propulsive and chilling locked box mystery filled with the dazzling hairpin twists that are the author's signature. The Only Survivors is best-selling author Megan Miranda's best novel yet. So I will say this is definitely typical Miranda writing in that the setting is pretty much a character itself, and her descriptions of everything are very well done. I could imagine the beach house. I can see the characters. I can feel the sense of who's really guilty here. I do feel that the twist worked in the story and didn't really come out of left field. Wait, let me rephrase that. Most of the twists worked well. There was one that I guess made sense, but it also feels like it wouldn't have happened no matter what that character felt of themselves. I don't know. The other reveals worked for me though. And it's moments like this is why I typically do spoiler reviews, but I'm going to do my best to forge on and not give too much away. There are plenty of red herrings to distract you from the truth, though I did have my suspicions about a certain character, and I will say that it being a thriller, don't expect a ton of character development. There's a pretty big cast here, and they're distinct enough to tell them apart, but we also don't get to know everyone as well as we could. But I think that comes with the territory of it being a thriller. I do have a few lingering questions about the characters, and some events were a little too convenient for my taste, and sometimes the pace was a bit slower than I needed it to be, but all in, I really enjoyed this read. Again, it's very, very much up Megan Miranda's alley in that it's familiar. She has a particular style and structure that she follows, but I still enjoy her work. There are some split timeline books that have really annoyed me lately, and I know, what a surprise, right? But I think that Miranda did something different with the peeks into the past by showing different characters' point of view with each of the times we go backwards. It was interesting to see those glimpses and then try and figure out what that meant within the current timeline. I'd definitely recommend this as a plane or a vacation read, but maybe not if you're going to the beach and don't want to read about a hurricane shutting down the beach town. I would definitely give this a 3.5 to 4 out of 5 stars. I had a lot of fun reading it, and of course I'll be snapping up whatever Miranda publishes next. Next up, we have a book that I borrowed from a friend who just told me it'd be a pretty easy read, and she was not wrong. So it's Uzumaki by Junji Ito. I apologize. I am probably butchering that last name. But it is a graphic novel, so it was pretty easy to read, even though it's like 600-something pages. But let's see what the back cover tells us. Kuruzuchu, a small fog-bound town on the coast of Japan, is cursed. According to Suichi Saito, the withdrawn boyfriend of teenager Kiri Goshima, their town is haunted, not by a person or being, but a pattern. Uzumaki, the spiral, the hypnotic secret shape of the world. This bizarre masterpiece of horror manga is now available as a single volume. Fall into a whirlpool of terror. So again, this review is going to be a little different than the others just because, again, this is a graphic novel, and doing some research, it looks like it was a series that were published in like a magazine or newspaper or something, and then all collated into one volume. But the story did build on itself, so you do have to read the chapters before to understand later what's happening. Very interesting read. The artwork is phenomenal. It's, a very spooky story of what's happening. The graphics can be a little disturbing if that does bother you. It's very much like The Ring, but drawn out. But all in, a quick read. Again, this was something that I think I started it last night and finished it sometime this afternoon. So very quick to get through. Again, the artwork does make this a much faster read, but definitely something different if you're looking for a spooky graphic novel is the best way to describe this book. But that is my April reading wrap up. Let me know if you read any of the same books I did this month and what you thought of them. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time in the reading room.